Hey everyone, what is up? This is Dan and Matt. Matt, what's going on?
What's up, y'all?
And you're listening, of course, to the Internship Podcast. The podcast, as you guys know, but for new listeners, is about helping and guiding young college students and professionals with decisions that they have to make, really between the ages of 17 and 24-ish, somewhere around there, to hopefully better your guys' careers, situations, things like that. So with that being said, if you like our stuff, if you know somebody going through what we're talking about, or, you see value, share this stuff, like it, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Today, we're going to talk about, what are we talking about today, Matt?
Today we're going to talk about taking every interview that you can get. So we'll go over a couple of things that we have, but the gist of it is learning this one experience, obviously, the experience telling your story, experience getting used to the interview style, networking, and then a better developed understanding of what you're looking for.
Cool. So taking every interview. So when I think back of when I was in school, and if you listen to the intro podcast, it was really hard to find a job for me. Getting out of school, it was just a bad economic time. So I literally was taking every interview, and it wasn't because for practice. It was like, shit, I need a job, so I'm taking everything I could get. But while I was going through that process, and one of the reasons why I want to talk to you guys about this is there are some bullshit interviews out there. There are some companies that are just scams. There are 100% commission only jobs, which you can actually make a lot of money in some of them, but you need to do your due diligence before you commit to that. Mm-hmm. There's insurance companies that will recruit you like crazy. When you graduate, you're going to get a lot of calls just oh, hey, we have this entry level thing. Well, you go in for the interview and it's just this complete bullshit job. And so, I kind of wanted to share my story with a bullshit interview, and I don't know if you've had any yourself, but the biggest bullshit one, first was Cutco, which was vector marketing. It was you go in and you sell knives, and I'm sure some of the listeners have done this, but basically they're oh yeah, sign up and then sell these knives to your family, and we know that you're not going to make any money. It was like a distribution channel just to interview people to sell to their families. And then the other one were these guys who they said, hey, come in for this interview. So I show up, I'm in a suit. They're in these express suits, nothing crazy, but they were oh yeah, we make, $250,000 a year, and this is what we do. We're a marketing company. But they were driving a 1998 Ford Escort or some shit outside. I was I didn't see any fucking nice cars in the parking lot, so I don't know what's going on. So that was my first skeptical thing. And they're why don't we go meet at the Sam's Club? We did the initial interview where he's asking interview questions. Yep. And then he's well, let's go meet at Sam's Club, and so we go to a Sam's Club, and there was a table, and it was it was essentially a marketing job to show, give freebies away, or do demos of, promotional products. But they built it up so much, and it was no money, and you get commissions. And I'm in a suit. This guy's in a suit. We're in a Sam's, and the person working his demo booth was hi, it was just brutal. And so at the end, I was man, are you sure you can make good money? He's yeah, I don't think you're the right fit for me, because I was questioning, I was skeptical. He was really trying to feed off of some people, you know what I mean? So that was my biggest bullshit interview I did. I don't know. Do you have any?
So just one thing, and I didn't know you were going to talk about the vector marketing thing. Even though it's a shitty job, I will say some of the best salespeople come out of Cutco and vector marketing, because it's a grind. It's 100% commission.
It's young, 100% commission.
And they will train you, but it is such, if you don't like sales, don't go anywhere near that. It's such a shitty job in that sense. But I know a guy who's actually owned two very successful companies. Yeah. He started and cut his teeth, but with Cutco and vector marketing. So if you're in sales, that's not a bad deal, but it's definitely a burn and turn, or churn and burn. I don't necessarily have any horror stories.
There were some shitty.
Well, no, here's the thing. I think you were a lot smarter than me in that capacity when starting out. I was sold on every story. Like
really?
every
dude, you're gonna make like a fucking $1 million, and you're like, sign me up, bro.
Every story I heard, I'm like, this sounds like an awesome opportunity. And literally, the first job I got, I went in, and it was a ADT dealership. And first, like one of the very first like interviews, like in an office setting that I had, and they were like, "So, what it is that you do? What are you, what have you done? Blah 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 blah." And then they start talking about like, "Well, how much money do you want to make?" And I was like, "Fuck, I don't know. What can I make? Like, what's going on here?" And then they got on the whiteboard, and they were like, "Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Here's the deal." And they started like mapping out like how I could make this money and talking about numbers and metrics.
Yeah.
And realistically, they were using terminology and lingo that I had no idea what it fucking was.
Right.
So at this point, I'm just like looking at them, like nodding my head. I'm like, hell yeah! Like I'm gonna make some fucking money.
Right. Yeah. And it will make sense. Like, oh, dude, if you just do this and this and this, you're going to make like, 6 figures, no problem,
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is you need to ask the question, so what does your average sales rep make? Not what does the 1%, you know what I mean? Because there's one person that drinks the Kool-Aid and does kill it in those environments. And I will say, going back to Vector real quick, I also think it's a mindset. I think that the young kids, whether you're in high school or college, going to those interviews to Vector, like that's your opportunity to not work at Chick-fil-A. So you already have a little bit different mindset. So while they do give you training and whatnot, I agree with you. It's not bad if you want to just grind out sales, but it is kind of
for everybody.
It's definitely like pyramid bullshit. Like,
yes, 100%. But I will say, like towards my next job, that's when I really got. So after having that job and leaving, then I really got into okay, what am I looking to do? And I was a lot more selective. And that's when I started learning about interviewing and taking all of these interviews. And that'll kind of segue into the first thing we wanted to talk about, which was an interview is an opportunity to tell your story. So especially when starting out, everybody has a story, but not everybody knows what their story is. So every interview...
Or how to tell it, really, because you're going in an interview and you're thinking, okay, what questions are they going to ask me? And you're just going to answer them very black and white. You're not going to dive into your story, maybe.
Right.
And people buy stories. They don't buy, or at least with products.
Exactly. And in an interview, you're selling yourself, right? So it's like sitting there, you're talking. What is your story? Where have you been? What did you do? And what were your accomplishments, right? Like, what the fuck did you do that made you stand out, whether it was an internship or it was, work in the kitchen, right? Doesn't matter. It's stuff to start thinking about, and every time you tell that story, you're going to get a little bit better at it. You're going to remember a little bit more. You're going to be able to craft it better so it sounds better. Most people don't know how much they've done and accomplished. So that goes on to a point I've made before, which is write everything that you're doing down. But big point here to me is number one is taking every interview gives you a chance to tell your story.
Yeah, and it's also practice. Practice not only telling your story, practice getting ready for the interview, practice prepping for the interview, practice with interacting with a hiring manager. And so, like, even if it's a job in your heart you don't want, it's fucking free practice. Like, what else do you have to do? You're going to play some Xbox or some shit? Like, who cares? Go on the interview, keep it moving, and that kind of goes into the next point that we wanted to talk about, which is just like, as you keep things moving, as you're doing more, you're kind of attracting, all of a sudden you'll go from like no offers, nothing happening, to all of a sudden you either have 5 interviews in like 3 days, or you get 3 offers at the same time. Like, that shit is real. Like, you might go 2 or 3 weeks with nothing, and then all of a sudden everything starts to pop.
Yep.
And it's because you kept things moving forward. It's because you had the willingness and openness to go and check out those opportunities, even if they weren't your choice A, right?
No.
So, like, even if you want to work at a Fortune 500 company, take a fucking interview with a car dealership.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just do it.
Absolutely. And what Dan's talking about is so true. It's like, and it's once you start to develop, like you start to build a little bit of momentum around, okay, I've got all these interviews going. It gives you options, and I can just relate it to when I first started out in sales. When I first started out in sales, nothing was more stressful until I got that first sale. So it was super stressful, and I was just like, when am I going to get it? When am I going to get it? When am I going to get it? And then all of a sudden I got my first one, and a little bit of stress was relieved. So one, obviously your success is predicated on how many sales you can get, aka your success is predicated on how many interviews that you can get, or really for the job that you can land. And it'll come out like it'll be such a weight lifted off your shoulders when you do have those options. It'll come out naturally through the practice, through your body language, your confidence, your vocal tonality, and it's just gonna, like I said, it's gonna make you a better interviewer, and it's gonna take a little bit of the weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I guess to Matt's point, keeping moving forward, like whenever you're going in for these interviews, and if you go in with a mindset of this is a practice interview, you probably will get the job because you don't care that much, that you're a little more relaxed and whatnot. But here's the thing. If your dream job is to work at Google and the only interview you get is Google, that's your only chance to really land a job. But that's your golden job that you really want. And you had no practice before that job. Like going to those other bullshit interviews that you really didn't want have prepped you for that Google interview or whatever interview. You know what I mean? So like as you go through the job search or internship search, like take everything you can get. And that's what the podcast is about, clearly.
Yeah. And obviously taking everything that you can get, the more interviews you take, the more people you're going to meet, which kind of rolls into my next point, which is networking. If you're between the ages of 17 and 24, this is an incredible opportunity for you to start developing your professional network. So, one, you write them a thank you email, right? That's pretty standard. Two, add them on LinkedIn. Add another note on LinkedIn and say, hey, great meeting you. Build that shit. Like build as much on LinkedIn as you possibly can. And if and a lot of times, like I said, if you can't find, sometimes a recruiter won't give you the hiring manager's email. LinkedIn. They're always on LinkedIn. So building your network. So for instance, even though this might not be the opportunity right now, or maybe they turn you down just because you don't have the experience, at least you went there and you met the person making that decision, so you could maybe come back in a couple of years and say, hey, remember me.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but like I remember whenever I started doing like legit interviews, I remember being like super nervous, like in the car before the interview, and just doing that enough times, you fucking like get over that. At some point.
Incredibly nervous. And
you're sitting there like, should I go up early? Should I not go up early? By the way, 5 minutes early max, in my opinion.
So I'd say 10 max, because you're going to be sitting in the lobby anyway. But get there. It's okay to get there 15 minutes early. But if you, if
you get there too early and you're like,
car.
Yeah, because like, and I know this is a little off topic, but of value, so we're going to talk about it. Like if you get there early and you show up 15, 20 minutes early, you're putting pressure on that hiring manager. Like, why the fuck is this person here so early? Like, I'm still in a meeting. I'm still got stuff going on. I'll be with them in a minute. Like, if you're there on time, a few minutes early, obviously never be late. So you're safe 5-10 minutes early. But any more than that is just almost like a
here's the deal.
Problem.
And if you're, you don't know what the commute looks like, you don't know how long it's going to take you to get there, play safe, right? Like make sure you get there early. And if you get there early, it's perfect because you should be prepped for your interview by doing homework on the company, looking at the job description, having that printed out. So you can sit in your car and you can start to review that. But I remember how nervous I would be sitting in my car and looking over this stuff. I would be too worried about prepping that I wouldn't eat any breakfast. And then I'd load myself up on caffeine. So I'm sitting there in my car, jittery, shaking, wasn't sleeping the night before. Yeah.
So let's make a rule. How about show up 20 minutes early and then sit in your car for 10?
There you go.
Boom.
Yep.
We just invented a universal rule of arriving to interviews.
Put it on. Write it down.
I'm going to fucking patent that shit.
Yep.
All right.
So, and I'll just kind of segue from here.
Yeah.
Another reason why taking every interview is good. We talk about this just about almost every podcast, how people end up majoring in something that they don't pursue a career in.
Right.
And majority of the people do that, and that's okay. But when you're in that situation, when you realize okay, I got this degree in journalism, but I don't want to be a journalist. So what the hell do I go do? Every interview you take is an opportunity to develop a better understanding of where you want to go in your career, or at least where you want to start. Everything from a company culture that you want down to the day-to-day actual activities, right? So when you're in these interviews, a lot of people will tell you, hey, make sure you ask questions, right? You hear that all the time. I'm a firm believer in it, but I'm also a person that says, don't fucking ask me, like, where do you see this company in 5 years? Because, motherfucker, I don't know. I don't know where this company's going to be in 5 years.
I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years.
Like, don't put me on the spot.
I might not even be at this fucking company in 5 years.
Right. Like, I'm already interviewing to go somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, so.
But ask engaging questions, right? Like, ask, like, about the position and how to move up and, like, what you can do. And, the day-to-day, you're going to learn a lot about that. But asking questions that are, like, super engaging, like, what's training like? Whatever it is, every question you ask, it's going to trigger some type of response that's either positive or negative. And my whole thing is when you go into an interview, especially if you get to the final, by the end of it, you should be completely polarized, right? Like either this is the position that I want, or no, this is 100% not the position for me. And either one of those, whether you get the job or not, are going to tell you something. It's going to tell you stuff that you like, stuff that you don't like, and it will be able to help you tailor where it is you're looking in the job market, or what kind of jobs, I should say.
Yeah, for sure. So good points there. I guess I kind of want to ask you and get your perspective, and I'll also give mine on, okay, so you go on all these interviews, right? Let's say you go on 10 interviews and you end up with 4 job offers, because that's a reality. If the more interviews you go on, the better you get at interviewing, the more people want to hire you. Mm-hmm. And so now all of a sudden you might be faced with the dilemma of, okay, well, what job do I choose, right? And so, or let's say you go on the first interview and you get a job offer right away. And so I guess a couple of questions that I have is, now that we're telling everyone and all the listeners, hopefully you're going on all these interviews that you can get, but we also want to help you with declining those offers that you might get for bullshit interviews or companies that you don't want to work with or whatever. So thoughts on how to decline, and also the value of maybe waiting. So like if you're being lowballed, let's say,
podcast on how to counter.
Yeah, so maybe we'll do an entire podcast on the value of either countering or I guess what I wanted to talk about was, if I take a job at $12 an hour today and I'm dedicated to that, I take myself off the table for a job that 2 weeks, if I would have just kept going for 2 more weeks, I might have gotten an offer for $18 an hour.
2 weeks is, in my opinion, and we might differ here, 2 weeks is a long time to wait for to wait.
No, I'm saying like as you continue to interview,
right,
you may put yourself in an opportunity to make 20, 30% more than that first offer that you just took.
And that goes along with doing market research, right? Like there's free resources.
Nowadays, for
Bureau
sure.
of Labor Statistics, Glassdoor, so you can kind of gauge what an average compensation is, and if you feel like you're average or above average, then don't settle for a below average compensation, because even though you need a job right now,
it's going to hurt you in the long run.
It'll hurt you in the long run, and you can, like you said, you can wait another 2 weeks for another opportunity like that.
Sorry to get off topic. Maybe we'll just do a quick episode on that down the road somewhere. So, going back to the question, declining the offer, right? So, like, you took their time, you owe them. If you're not going to go there, but you took it just for a free interview, just to get some practice, that's cool. We recommend that. We think it's best for you. But don't ghost them if there is an offer or something like that. Let's talk a little bit about best ways to decline.
Yeah, and to kind of preface that, like, we are saying, like, take the interviews, especially if they're positions you're somewhat interested. There's got to be a little bit of interest there. So on the opposite end of this spectrum, if you're an accountant, don't take an interview for a forklift operator, right?
Right.
Just to kind of get in there.
And don't show up in a tuxedo. If you do take the forklift operator.
Exactly. Yeah, but as far as declining offers go, just follow up, right? It's common courtesy, and it's what you would expect out of other people. If you're interviewing for a job, you would want to hear back. Not all companies do that. That's okay. But no, just because of the fact, like, you want to hear yes or no, they should get a yes or no.
Yeah. No, and I agree. Like, just let them know that, hey, this opportunity, as I dug into it, either isn't my thing. You can be real with them, or you can say, hey, it's as simple as I took another offer. It was just a little bit better for me, closer to home, whatever. It just lined up with me.
Yep.
Right. So that's it. I would say, look, if you don't have a job lined up, you're graduating college, that's your full-time job. So make it a full-time job. Make interviewing a practice session.
Yep.
Just like you would with athletics, anything.
Mm-hmm. And we can do a whole another whole podcast on how to interview and how to prep for interviews, like how getting into that. But for right now, like we said, I think the point is start taking interviews. No matter what it is that you're looking for, like, okay, if you're open to sales, I'd say go to Vector Marketing. Take the interview.
Take the interview, for sure.
Take the interview just to hear about it. Northwestern Mutual, they've got an incredible training program.
Yeah, I got hit up for a ton of insurance companies when I got out.
All insurance companies, right? And companies are going to interview different ways. But again, and actually we could probably at some point do add some resources on the website to where it's like companies that we know are always hiring.
Yeah, for sure. And there are companies that are always hiring that are good companies. So we'll try to add some type of context. Either we'll do a blog post or a guide or something like that on our website, theinternshippodcast.com. So check that out. We'll try to update that. We may just do a whole podcast and then upload it at that point. But for today, I mean, the whole point, take every interview you get. Anything else, Matt?
No, I think that's it.
Perfect. So, all right, guys. Well, that's all we got. If you liked what we had to say, again, I know I say this every podcast and it probably gets annoying, but like it, share it, tell a friend, go on some interviews, and we'll talk to you next time.
Deuces.